So let's talk about the bench press. The bench press is probably one of the more popular exercises, at least amongst guys. So things to understand about the bench press is that you want shoulder blade movement. So the two little wings on your back there, you want them moving as you're kind of pulling your arms back closer to you and then pressing. So that's one thing I would say is a more common mistake, is that people are pressing without actually moving and opening your chest. The other thing is you need to press in a way where your wrists and your elbows are stacked. You don't want to be pressing on the inside. Not that you can't do it, it's just if you want to maximize the amount you're using your chest, you want your wrists and elbows stacked. So what that typically looks like for a bench press is that you're going to kind of come outside, kind of the 40, 45-ish degree angle. You're not going to come up super high. In this case, your elbow and wrist are still stacked, which is a subtle difference, but if you're coming too high, what ends up happening is you kind of tend to bias the front of your shoulder. So if you're doing any pressing motion, you're going to use your chest, you're going to use your triceps to the back of your arm, and then the front of your shoulder. So those are the three kind of primary muscles you use in pressing motions, at least horizontally. But you can change your arm position to kind of bias those muscles. So for example, if I keep my elbow pretty tight, not a lot of chest movement I can get down there. So it tends to be a dominant tricep exercise. Whereas if I wing up and get really high here, it's going to put a lot more stress on the top of your shoulder. So some subtle differences. I won't get into flat versus incline versus decline too much, but just say that there are different angles to kind of bias a different portion of the chest. So if I'm doing incline, it's going to start to bias the upper chest and your front shoulder. If I do flat, it's more kind of mid. And then if I do a decline, what tends to happen is you get more of that kind of lower pec involvement. You still use the chest, it's just the way that muscle fibers are activated and used more is kind of done more based on the angle that you're using. So some general tips about bench press, whether you're using dumbbell or barbell, is that you want good kind of 5-point contact with your feet, your butt, and your head and your shoulders. And then if you're using a bar, you usually want to slide so that your eyes are just underneath the bar. And then you're going to unrack it. So you want to find kind of that distance that works for you where, that, like I said, the wrists and elbows are stacked. So inside is going to bias the triceps. Outside will actually bias the chest a lot more, but it's just not the strongest position. So kind of find where that is and kind of float up, and it should roughly be kind of for you somewhere around, based on whatever's down here, it should be pretty close up here. And then what you want to do is most bars will have, they're called gnarlings. They're little kind of depressions in the bar. You can use that to landmark, on what fingers are both touching that same spot. So from there, you're going to unrack by kind of pushing your shoulders down and kind of crawl the shoulder blades back first. So they're kind of touching there, push up. And then you're going to start kind of over top of your shoulders, so not over top of your eyes, shoulders. And then you're going to, as you lower, the bar is actually going to move forward. So down kind of to your nipples, feel that tension in your chest kind of increase on the way down, and press back up in that kind of same bar path. So think of it shoulders, kind of nipples at the bottom, so kind of like a little J. And everyone's movement will be slightly different, but the J kind of pattern of movement just helps you maximize the amount that you use that chest. So with dumbbell, a little different. You don't have a bar, so you're not stuck in this kind of rigid position. You can have a little more wiggle room with what feels good for you. But the idea is that as you lower the weight, you want that chest kind of to stretch and open up. And then from what it should look like kind of from the back side, is those shoulder blades should be coming together. So you want movement there. And you don't want the shoulder blades up here. You want to think of like the shoulder blades, like the little wings on your shoulder there, are kind of tucked in your back pocket. Get them set, and as you lower the bar, they kind of come together. So a variation of a chest press is a push-up, same kind of thing. So you're going to have that same kind of arm position on the bottom. You don't want your push-ups way up here, but you want that position away from your body where that wrist and elbow are stacked. And then from there, as you lower yourself into a push-up, you feel those shoulder blades kind of come together. As you press away from yourself, you should feel them kind of move away. So those are the main tips for bench press and chest pressing without making things too complicated. But one thing to think of is a chest press or a horizontal press is the opposite of a row. So I'll talk about rows in our video. You can check that one out to see it, but just understand that there's kind of like two different movements. They're the same, but just you're loaded on one side versus the other. So chest press is right here, whereas a row, you're pulling. So check out that other video for more information about how to do a proper row.